Barry Wilson, Wilson Auto Repair. Wintertime, cold weather, what am I going to do about my car? Most of the guys probably up north already have a plan of action of how they're going to handle their car and how they store it for the winter. But some of us boys in the South never think about the fact that it could freeze and it could cause problems and maybe cost some money when you get ready to bring your car out of the winter for into the spring. I had that actually happen to me one time. I bought a car in California and parked it outside, and it got caught with a freeze overnight, and actually got very lucky because the freeze plugs popped out and it didn't crack the block. But that's the worst thing that can happen here is if something happens and you don't have adequate protection in your radiator, which interprets into your motor, which is we all call antifreeze, then the water would freeze, and when it does, it expands and it can crack your radiator, or it could crack your engine, which is even worse, and that's usually irreparable without replacing with another motor. So what do you need to do to protect yourself? Most people don't think about that now with a brand new car or the cars that are on the market today. We just don't check those kinds of things. When I grew up, every winter you always used to check that to make sure you had antifreeze. A lot of that was because these older cars, when you parked them hot, they would boil the water out, and you'd go to the gas station and you would fill up with gas, but there was an attendant there, and he had a hose he'd bring out, like a garden hose, and he'd open your radiator cap up and fill it back up. So winter came around, and you were probably full of water and no antifreeze. One of the easiest things to remember if you do not have a tester and you get caught in a bind with a freeze that night and your car happens to be exposed to the cold weather is to simply look in your radiator. So if you open your cap up and take your flashlight and look down in there and it's dark green or orange, most likely you have enough protection. If it's muddy or clear, you better do something about it. Now, if you don't have any antifreeze at your disposal at that very minute, if you could just simply reach under there and drain the water out of your radiator, that would be the best solution if there's no other solution available at the time. Otherwise, you need to drain it down and fill it back up with antifreeze. Now, antifreeze can't be 100% in your engine. It has to be 50-50. So half antifreeze, half water. If it's all antifreeze, it doesn't transfer heat. And if you drove your car, it would overheat because it doesn't transfer the heat out through your radiator. So it's 50-50. We actually keep it here in the shop already pre-mixed as 50-50, so we don't have to recognize how much is in there, how much we're going to put in there. We just put 50-50 in and we're always safe. Now, the other way you can even take it another step is to go get a antifreeze tester like this one. They're available at any of these parts stores like AutoZone, Pep Boys, any of them. Napa's another one. You can walk in and pick this up off the shelf, and it's real easy to use. All you do is squeeze this little, whoop, I made a mess there. You squeeze this little tip right here, stick the hose down in here, and then release it, and you can see it sucks some of the antifreeze up. When you bring it back up, kind of hold it up like that, and then you come around to this side, and you can actually get a reading of the mixture and how far it's going to protect you down. So this, if you see this red needle, it's pointing over to minus 20 degrees. So minus 20 degrees, that's usually pretty good when you're in the South. Now up north, you probably want to get down to minus 32, which is the maximum you can get, and that's the protection that you probably want up in the north. But around here, minus 22 would work very well. That means that you are down to minus 22 before it even think about freezing. If you're above zero and you think it's going to get down to zero, then you want to drain some down, put some fresh solid antifreeze in without any water. In Texas, we're usually good to about 20 degrees, and then that's about as cold as it ever gets. But be sure that you are protected. If it's 50-50, it'll be minus 32. So then you just squeeze and push that back in there. Now, a lot of people have trouble with this. The radiator cap is not the easiest to get off. You think, when you look at it, you think all I have to do is turn it like this, and a lot of them are so difficult you can't turn them. I get a lot of questions about that. So push down on it really hard, and then give it a twist like that just with your palm. What happens when you put the radiator cap on there is this spring pushes against the cap to seal it up inside the radiator. And so sometimes they are very, very stiff and very difficult to get open. then you see these ears right here. They line up with the notches in the radiator. So you put the ears down in so it goes like that, and then give it a twist, and that's not locked yet. When it locks, it goes like that. You can feel it get tight, and you know you're in good shape. Now, if it's really, really bad, you can get a pair of large pliers and put around the outside of it, and then have somebody push down on it for you as they're applying pressure to turn it to help you get it off. And that happens occasionally on some of these radiators. That's probably the most important thing you should do when it comes to getting your car ready for the winter. There are some other things that would help make it last longer and make things work better. And one is to clean your battery terminals. This is the terminal cleaner that I have, and it simply goes over the top of your battery right here onto the battery. You notice that I have the battery cable removed, and you put it on like this and kind of twist it as you're putting it on, and give it a few twists like that. Then remove it by twisting it. Now you can see it's shined that up. So it makes for a really, really good connection. And as cars set without any use, the moisture builds up in here, and this connection kind of gets a little dirty. So before you store your car, clean your battery cables, and then stick the other end of this in here. You can see it's a steel brush inside the cable like this, and twist that a few times, and that'll clean it up. And then when you get ready to put it back together, it's got a good clean connection. Now, if you're going to leave your car connected up, in other words, not remove your battery cable for the winter, then you might want to get a battery tender to hook from here to here, which is a small charger that monitors the condition of your battery and kind of keeps it in good condition all winter long. A battery that discharges is what we call, it actually happens, the term is sulfates, means that the plates then get hard and won't accept a charge. So you don't want to let your battery run down. You want to keep it charged up. If you're not going to start it every month or so to keep the battery charged up, then get a battery tender. They're about $100. You hook them up here, and then you just plug it into the wall and leave it. You'll see there's a little green light that you can use that tells you it's working. Then, or you can disconnect your cable if you think you have a problem of this causing your battery to go down. Now, what you'll notice, well, it didn't work then, but if you have a cable that's off and you touch it and it sparks like this, that probably means you have some sort of electrical draw, and it might be might be a bad idea to leave this disconnected. The other thing that you can do is to take a look at your oil. Oil can, a lot of times, can get, in the wintertime, it can get milky, meaning that the motor doesn't warm up and the humidity inside the engine starts building up and attaches itself to the oil, and then the oil gets milky, which is kind of a brown, light brown look. This is just oil right here, but milky is real easy to see. It looks like somebody poured a gallon of milk down in there. That means you're not letting your motor warm up enough. You need to change that oil, put fresh oil in there, and then warm your engine up continuously until that all goes away. Sometimes that's hard to do, to get it out of the engine. I have a car that doesn't like to warm up, and have to be very careful about watching the oil because it will turn milky, and boy, is that hard to get out of there. One time I had to put 5 gallons of diesel down in through the motor after I drained the oil and let it sit for a while to try to wash that milky stuff out of there. So I'm going to put the dipstick back in right there in the hole. And by the way, this is easy to do. You pull your dipstick out, and if you're going to check your oil, you just wipe it off. I'm going to do it with a finger. Here, I'm going to get a paper towel. I'm going to do this officially. So you get a paper towel and you wipe it off like this and clean it, and then identify the full and empty marks on here. So you can see this says add between here and here, and this says full right there. So if you're somewhere around the lower mark, you may want to add some oil. I suggest that you change your oil at the end of the season so it's fresh to go. Now, people ask me, how often should I change my oil? And the question for that, or the answer to that question, is if you use a synthetic oil, and we use Joe Gibbs 1050, and be sure you add zinc to these older motors. That's very important. Then you can change it once a year if you don't do a whole lot of driving. You do a whole lot of driving, you probably need to watch it, see if it's going down, and maybe change it twice, maybe 3 times in the summer, depending on the mileage that you add to it. Now put the dipstick back in, and the last thing I want to show you is tires. If you let your car sit here with low tires, the tendency is for them to go flat, and I think they probably are going to rot a little more if they don't stay pumped up. So you take the cap off like this, and you want to keep that cap handy, and you take a gauge like this and push it on the end of that real hard, and you'll get a reading at the bottom. So I'm going to do it again here, make sure I got a good reading because this is kind of leaking. All right, now you can see this tire has about 20 pounds in it. It needs to have about 35 pounds. So if you were going to add air, I have this, but you can buy all sorts of nozzles to add air. This one actually gives you a reading as you're adding the air. Now, some of you guys may have not ever used an air hose, so you take the connector right here and put it in here and then pull this back like this, and then you shove them together. So it's kind of difficult, but to see how that works. Now, if you want to disconnect it, hold on to this real tight and pull that back, and it'll pop off. You may have just bought a compressor for your garage and you're having a little trouble with it, and that's how that works. Then once you have this, you can put it on the valve stem right here, and you can get the reading again, and it's exactly right. It's at 23 pounds. Squeeze this right here on this handle. It adds air, and then get another reading until you get it pumped up to around 30, 35 pounds. I'm at about 32 right there. Get your tires pumped up for the wintertime. I think it'll be helpful to make them last a little bit longer. If you have any questions about how to winterize your car or anything you want to know, be sure to give me a call or email me at wilsonautorepair@gmail.com. I'm Barry Wilson at Wilson Auto Repair. Go to my website, wilsonauto.com. Bang. How'd that work?